Welcome, Guardians. We're in 1 week in since the release of Witch Queen, and boy, oh boy, have I been having a boatload of fun. I've had so much fun, firstly because this was actually my first expansion that I've played with a friend, and then the Legendary campaign, whole different level of amazingness. This video is going to be more of an initial thoughts type video, starting off with the campaign. The option to choose a harder difficulty in terms of Legendary campaign was a huge upside, because in the past campaigns were way too easy and the storytelling was okay, to say the least. First two expansions. But this campaign, it was no walk in the park. There were multiple wipes and a good amount of strategy talks. Even my clanmate pulling out some weapons from the vault to help within some encounters. The entire campaign playthrough probably took close to 12-ish hours. It will definitely go down as my favorite, at least until future campaigns. See what happens in Lightfall in the final shape. Now, that's just the combat side of things. I think the storytelling in this campaign was light years above anything that Bungie has ever put out in Destiny. We've become so accustomed to knowing pretty much every story beat before we get to play due to how marketing and Bungie reveals their stuff. But for once in a very long time, we got to be surprised. And it wasn't just one story thing, it was multiple. And these surprises has easily cemented that it is my favorite story Bungie has told so far. Next, we're going to jump into more of the expansion after campaign endgame stuff. First, we're going to be talking about Finch, and wow, what an improvement they've made to a destination vendor. Gone are the days of picking up the destination material for consumable use, but instead it acts as vendor XP. Same thing goes for chests scattered around the Throne World. And I finally have a reason to pay public events again, at least until I hit level 30 with Finch. Rank 1 through 11, you get an item out of his reward line, and then an engram, like any other vendor at this point. And then after rank 11, you only get a reward from that reward line every other rank until level 30. But you do get an engram still each rank. This is what I was hoping for in terms of vendors when D2 first came out, like giving me XP for actually spending time on the destination. And we finally got there. Love to see this build upon with the current vendors in the game. Next is the deep site secrets within the Throne World. They're cool and unique, but I'd say that's all they kind of have going for them. I was expecting them to be much more than just revealing chests and a couple paths during missions. So that was a little bit of a letdown. But one huge quality of life thing that I would love Bungie to implement is knowing which tier that deep site was before we reveal it. We see which tier it is before we unlock that tier, like if you walk up to one, it says requires level 3 or level 2. Then after that, I have no clue if I'm activating a tier 1 or a tier 3. For the most part, that's pretty much all I have for deep site. I don't think they'll really expand upon it at all, unless if it's going to be a big mechanic within the raid. Moving into Wellspring, and that's an activity that, depending on the day, might just put me to sleep. So Wellspring has two different modes. There are the attack days and the defend days, which are on a daily rotation. Then the enemy faction you fight is different per day as well. Hive will attack and Scorn will defend. There are also 4 different bosses in total, 2 per mode, so you get a knight and a ogre with Hive attack, and then 2 Scorn guys, which honestly I couldn't tell the difference with defend. But overall, they don't make kind of any change about the final fight. Pretty much all the mechanics are the same. The only difference, obviously, with the Hive is the ogre constantly shooting you. But I think I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in depth in a separate video down the road. But the biggest issue at the moment, again, as an initial thought, is the drop rate of the red border or attunement weapons. You can go multiple runs, not get a single thing. Not even the weapon with an attunement. You can just get armor that's a guaranteed drop. And it's bad. It's so bad that Bungie's already looking into it, but it took almost a week for them to say anything. Now, I don't think this drop rate would be considered bad, per se, if they weren't tied to a quest line. Because then we wouldn't really have a need, and people could get them when they get them whenever they want to shape that weapon. But as a quest, it's no-go. I did see someone on Twitter say that they should be upping the drop rate, but then increase the amount of attunement needed for the pattern to be crafted. I think the auto rifle, you need 2 patterns. So in upping the drop rate, maybe have it, you need 5 attunements to be completed. And I think that's honestly a great idea because it, as they stated, it feels like you are actually making progress. You see, oh, cool, I'm 3 out of 10 done. I'm now 7 out of 10 done instead of, cool, I've gotten 1 after 30 runs. And it just feels defeating almost. But since we are talking about attunement and patterns, let's just jump into weapon crafting. So weapon crafting is so freaking confusing. Like, it took me probably the first 5 days to even slightly understand it, which is, I don't think it's a good look, especially for new lights. But I think we were a little misled, or at least I was. I was under the assumption that when we got an attunement weapon, once that was finished attuning it, we would get that pattern, and then we could pick a perk to add to the crafting menu. Well, that's not the case. It seems like anything can drop with an attunement. But at least for now, there's only a select group of weapons for crafting. And those are all the Throne World and New Foundry weapons. And raid weapons. But with the introduction of crafting, we also get enhancement perks. That as you level up your crafted weapon, you can reshape and have one of the enhanced perks. Or 2, whichever you want. The issue, though, is that the enhanced perks barely enhance the perk. And it's not worth it for the crap load of materials that are required for it. Probably also make this its own video in the future once Bungie gets some stuff ironed out a little bit more. But weapon crafting was such a big selling point on Witch Queen. It just didn't hit correctly. Not even close. Bungie seems to have a tendency to make things a little bit more complicated than what it needs to be. But last up, and the biggest thing outside of the campaign and story, is the Void 3.0 update. Void 3.0 brings back the aspect of having your own unique subclass. Kind of like D1. This has evolved even more and builds upon the space magic and the MMO style of the game that they are building. I've honestly never had this much fun with a subclass build ever in my time in the franchise, and I can't wait until we get Solar and Arc 3.0 to dig even deeper with those. I will say, I do more messing around in terms of the Warlock. I need to do more subclass messing around, since I feel like I don't have its full potential set up. But I am having a lot of fun so far with both the Titan Bubble and the Hunter with its Mobius Quiver and the new invisible glaive thing that Glad figured out. That's a lot of fun to just go around whacking stuff. But it's to the point that I can actually see myself wanting to play these other characters, Titan and Hunter respectively, more each week than once a year when the expansion comes out. Now you could say, okay, but what about Stasis? That is pretty much what the Light 3.0 changes are centered around, and you'd be right. But Stasis was new, and I had no clue of what to expect. I had no real way of going right off the bat and having something, a build set up at all, knowing what it would entail. But Void is something that we have used and known since 2014. So I knew how to use the subclass and how to set up builds a lot more than even my current knowledge of Stasis. And obviously that's going to build as we get more Stasis stuff in the game. But that's all I have for this video. I'm excited to see what might happen after the raid is completed and what secrets might be unleashed out in the throne world. Boy, I'm excited for that. But until next time, Guardians, stay safe.